Imagine this scene. A mother of two, she goes for her regular routine check-in with immigration. She expects to just sign in, head home, like she always did.
Yeah.
But instead, she's taken into custody. And then, boom, swiftly deported.
It's quite a jarring image.
And this isn't hypothetical. It's exactly what happened to Guadalupe Garcia de Rios. An event so significant, actually, that it prompted the Mexican government to issue an official warning to its citizens living here in the U.S.
A pretty serious step for them to take.
Definitely. So today we're doing a deep dive into Guadalupe's specific case. Our mission really is to unravel the legal and policy shifts that led to her deportation.
Right. What changed?
Exactly. And maybe more importantly, explore the broader implications this has for immigration enforcement for communities all across the U.S. We'll be looking really closely at the sequence of events, the details, because this feels like a truly pivotal story.
It does. And we're drawing on a recent news report that lays out a lot of these details.
Okay, so this case, it's not just about one person's rapid deportation, is it?
No, not at all. It starkly illustrates how these deeply established agreements, understandings between individuals and the government, how they can just be, avoided almost overnight.
Because of a shift in executive priority.
Precisely. Guadalupe was taken into custody right after that scheduled check-in. This was with ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement in Central Phoenix, and deported very shortly after.
And that speed, that's what triggered the warning from Mexico.
That seems to be the catalyst, yes. Telling their citizens in the United States to take precautions. That's a direct quote.
Okay, so let's start by understanding Guadalupe's journey a bit. Who is she? What was her history with the U.S. immigration system leading up to this?
Sure. So Guadalupe Garcia de Rios, she was 36 at the time this happened, a mother of two children. She actually came to the U.S. way back in 1996
Okay.
as an undocumented immigrant when she was just 14 years old. And her husband is also undocumented.
So a long time here. Did she have any run-ins with the law before this?
Her legal entanglement, as the source puts it, didn't really begin until 2008.
Ah, okay. And what happened then?
That's when she was arrested in Mesa, Arizona. It came out that she'd used someone else's social security number when she was applying for a job.
Right, okay. A common situation, unfortunately, for undocumented workers trying to find employment.
It is, and this led to her conviction in 2009. It was for a nonviolent felony criminal impersonation.
Nonviolent felony. That sounds serious, but also maybe not the kind of thing that always led to immediate deportation back then.
Well, that's part of the nuance here. Then, fast forward to 2013, an immigration judge found she didn't have a legal basis to stay in the country.
Okay.
And issued what's called a voluntary departure order, basically instructing her to return to Mexico.
So wait, a voluntary departure order? That's different from a formal deportation order.
Yes, it is distinct. It generally allows someone to leave on their own, potentially avoiding some of the harsher long-term consequences of a forced deportation, like bars to reentry. It suggests a degree of maybe cooperation or acceptance of the situation at that time.
Okay, so she had this conviction, a felony, albeit nonviolent, and this 2013 order telling her to leave. It really sounds like on paper her time in the U.S. was up.
You'd think so, right?
Yeah, but she was still here for years after that.
How? How is that possible, given that legal history?
And this is where it gets really complex and, frankly, central to the whole story. Despite that order, under the Obama administration, Guadalupe essentially struck a deal, or maybe an understanding, with immigration authorities.
A deal? What kind of deal?
To stay in the country, she agreed to check in regularly with ICE. At first it was yearly, then it became every 6 months.
Yep.
And the absolutely crucial detail from the source is she followed the order diligently. She did exactly what ICE asked her to do. Wow. So she was operating completely within this established agreement with the government, checking in, following the rules they set for her.
Exactly. And that criminal impersonation charge, while a felony, its classification as nonviolent, often put individuals like her in a lower priority category for removal under the previous administration's enforcement guidelines. That's a key piece of context.
That raises the huge question then. What changed? What changed so drastically that this long-standing arrangement, this diligent compliance, just went out the window?
Well, her lawyer in Phoenix, Reina Isabel Maldonado, she has a very clear opinion on this.
What did she say?
She's quoted saying she believes Guadalupe's deportation is 100% to do with Trump's executive order.
100%.
Like,
Okay. Can you break down how that specific order targeted individuals like Guadalupe? What did it actually change?
absolutely. The new executive order basically laid out a much broader policy. It essentially said if an individual is undocumented and has any kind of criminal history, they become a priority for deportation.
Any criminal history. So that
Mm.
conviction from 2009.
Exactly. Using someone else's social security number for work, even though it was classified as a nonviolent felony years ago, it clearly falls under the definition of a crime in this new framework.
So the executive order didn't change the law itself, but it dramatically changed who ICE was told to prioritize for enforcing that law.
That's a good way to put it. It shifted her status almost instantly from someone complying with an agreement to someone prioritized for removal, purely based on that past conviction and the new enforcement directive, despite her ongoing compliance with the check-ins.
This really throws that contrast in enforcement philosophies into sharp relief, doesn't it?
Mm.
The report we're looking at, it describes the previous administration's approach, the one that allowed the check-ins, as kicking the can down the road.
Yes, that phrase is used.
Kicking the can down the road. That implies what? Just delaying the inevitable? Putting off a hard decision.
Pretty much. It meant deferring that final decision on their legal status, allowing them to stay, often, as you said, in a kind of legal limbo, as long as they kept checking in. It avoided forcing immediate deportation for everyone with, say, a minor or old conviction.
It sort of acknowledged the complexity, maybe? That not every case fit neatly into a deportation priority box back then.
Perhaps. It was a form of prosecutorial discretion, focusing resources on perhaps more recent or serious cases.
Okay, so if that was kicking the can, how does the report frame the current administration's approach with these executive orders?
It's framed more as simply executing the law. The idea presented is that the orders were instructing ICE on how the existing laws should be carried out.
So moving away from discretion towards a more rigid application.
That's the contrast presented. The argument from this perspective is, look, the law says this person is deportable because of the conviction, so enforce the law, deport them.
Regardless of the time passed or the compliance with previous arrangement.
Exactly. It's presented as a significant reprioritization, emphasizing a very broad application of existing immigration laws, moving away from the more selective, discretionary enforcement we saw before.
Given this sudden dramatic shift impacting someone like Guadalupe, who seemed to be doing everything asked of her under the old rules, it's not really surprising there was an immediate, intense public reaction.
No, not at all. The scene described is quite striking.
What happened on the ground?
Well, you had protesters who actually tried to physically block the ICE van that had Garcia de Reyes inside it as it was trying to leave, presumably heading towards the border.
Wow.
Yeah, the report mentions one man even tried to tie himself to the van's wheels. It speaks to the raw emotion and desperation of the moment.
Did it work? Did they stop the van?
No, ultimately the attempt failed. Apparently, officials just used a different exit to get the vehicle away.
Must have been incredibly tense. It sounds like people saw her not just as an immigration case, but as, a member of the community being taken away.
It certainly seems that way, like an attack on a neighbor, maybe, more than just abstract policy enforcement for many people there.
And what about the ripple effects? Beyond that immediate protest, what are the potential consequences of a case like this becoming widely known?
Well, Carlos Garcia, he's the director of an advocacy group called Puente Arizona. He made a prediction right away.
What did he foresee?
He predicted that other undocumented immigrants who are also required to do these regular IC check-ins, they would now most likely go into hiding.
That makes sense. If you see someone following the rules get deported anyway.
Why would you show up for your own check-in? He called this an unfortunate side effect of the enforcement action against Garcia de Reyes.
An unfortunate side effect. That feels like an understatement if people are driven further underground. If people do go into hiding, what does that mean practically for communities?
Well, think about it. Does it impact kids going to school if their parents are terrified of any interaction with authorities? Does it affect people seeking health care?
Or even reporting crimes, right? If you're scared of deportation, you might not call the police, even if you're a victim or a witness.
Exactly. It creates this profound chilling effect across the community. And the report touches on another consequence, too.
Which is?
If people stop showing up for check-ins and go into hiding, it means the government, ICE, will have to work harder to try to find those individuals.
Which could lead to more aggressive tactics.
Potentially. The report uses the term dragnets.
Dragnets. That term itself paints a picture, doesn't it? It implies broader, maybe less targeted enforcement sweeps.
It certainly suggests that, yeah. Actions where authorities might round up many individuals in an area rather than focusing only on specific identified targets. And that, of course, only increases fear and vulnerability in the undocumented community.
Pushing people further into the shadows, as you said,
Huh.
it could make things like public health outreach or even just basic community trust with any kind of authority much harder.
Definitely. We've seen that in other contexts. Heightened fear makes cooperation very difficult.
So, really, the core insight here, drawing from Guadalupe's story, seems to be about the immense power of executive discretion. How the exact same laws, the same past conviction, can lead to vastly different outcomes.
Yeah.
From a routine check-in under one administration's priorities to immediate deportation under another's, all based on policy shifts, not on her doing anything new or wrong according to the previous agreement.
Absolutely. This case isn't just about her deportation, as tragic as that is for her family. It's a stark illustration, really, of how these understandings, these agreements build over time between people and government agencies can just be wiped away
Instantly voided.
by a change at the top, a shift in executive priorities, and the impact isn't just on one person, it ripples out, affecting entire communities, trust, compliance, everything.
Which leads us to the final thought we want to leave you with today.
Yeah.
Something to really mull over. What are the deep, complex ripple effects when these kinds of long-standing agreements, these established understandings between individuals and authorities, are suddenly changed, especially in really sensitive areas like immigration? How does that shift impact not just the individual lives caught in the middle, like Guadalupe's, but also the very fabric of communities? And what does it do to the broader landscape of trust and compliance between people and the government?